G'day YouTube, Wobbles on a lot here. I know I took you for a ride on the motorbike in the last video, but I just got a letter to which I'm gonna have to RSVP. And contrary to popular belief, RSVP does not mean reply sending a valuable present. Oh, no. RSVP is snail-eating, frog-broiling talk for respondez, s'il vous plaît. And I've been invited in writing to attend a bit of an award ceremony. I have to go and see someone get a medal. And it's been alleged that I'm nominated for a 20-year long service medal and a clasp. Just there is the requirement for me to respondez-vous s'il vous plaît. And they invite me and my guests and brigade members to attend the medal ceremony. Well, I mentioned it to the daughter, who goes to work before sunrise and comes home after sundown, and yeah, she said she'll probably show up. I mentioned it to my son, and he said, yeah, well, he has to be there anyway because, you know, he's sort of going to be on the other side of the podium. But I suspect he's probably getting something as well, because I think they're calculating from January 2003, when he and I both attended a basic firefighter course, just after Canberra had burned, or while Canberra was burning. But 2022 was the first time I attended a Section 44 fire, and 1994 was the first time somebody hooked up a firefighting trailer behind my old Toyota Light Stout running on LP gas, and we put in a night backburn around a little ridge over there on the other side of my neighbour's place. So if you count how long I've been turning up to bushfires, yeah, I'll take a 20-year service class. That's cool, because for most of that 20 years all I've really been doing is attending meetings, because I'm so far from the fire station that by the time I show up on a call out, they've already left. What I am a little bit good for is sitting up here on the hill and keeping an eye out down the valley. And yeah, I have put out one spot fire on my own driveway, and throwing up a few videos on the solo hazard reduction burn program to try and share some of my tips and tricks on how to black yourself out without setting the whole forest alight when you live in a bushfire fuel bomb. So I've had a little bit of practice at that. And I suppose my kids growing up here on kerosene lamps and candles until I think they were 10 and 11 when I got the first solar panel. Might be how my son grew up to be the youngest deputy captain in the brigade when he was 17, ascending the promotional ladder till he became a group officer, and they can't promote him any further as a volunteer when he was 30. So yeah, I'll take a long service medal and a clasp for raising two kids to be safe living in the bush. And now, for the fun of it, we'll have a front camera view riding to town to make my RSVP, and we're probably going to stop for bread along the way. Okay, so we've got that recording. Maybe you can see how the microphone is sitting in the centre of my chest. See if that gets perhaps a little bit less wind noise than when the microphone is up. Oops, how would that be? Microphone's up about there. There's got a lot of wind noise when I went to town with the microphone on my back, with the camera on my back. Oh. Okay, ready to go in economy mode. This battery hasn't been ridden for 3 weeks, so we're starting off at 99%. The idea with 2 batteries is to alternate them in service in order to preserve calendar life. But when you don't buy the second battery till you've got about 3,500 kilometres on one battery, it means, oh, I wonder what that was. Oh, yeah. That would have been the afterbirth of a sheep. And I think I'll go this way today as well rather than play with the mud pie. The joys of living on trap rock. When it's wet, you go nowhere, and when it's dry, you grow nothing. Which is why it's so cheap when you buy it. $400 an acre for 100 acres. Which is 40 hectares in the metrical way of looking at life. So, I suppose we might as well make this into episode 20 of the Trumpocalypse Chronicles, which seem to have evolved into mainly being recorded on the bike, and I haven't done one for a while and a lot's going on. As I alluded to in the previous video, it's grown from having 1 or 2 bad things happen every week, crazy, dystopian, difficult to explain things, to about 5 such episodes every day over in the US, based on looking at it from here. I don't think Trumpy has recovered from Elon Musk making an excretion to the fact that he was dropping a big bombshell because the big news was that Donnie is all over the Epstein files. Pretty much everything that's happened since then could be seen as a distraction, but if you really wanted to get conspiratorial, it's possible that the Epstein files have been thrown into play by Musk in order that the furore over the Epstein files might cover some of the truly dystopian, authoritarian, dictatorial, tyrannical shit that's going down, because there's been so much attention focused on how close was the connection between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And yesterday I found a tweet, no, sorry, not a tweet, a comment, 3-week-old comment from a tuber I haven't talked to for about 5 bloody years, maybe more, because they initially showed up on the channel and were really friendly, and I told them a lot about myself, and then they decided I was a terrible bloody communist because I said that America was sliding into an authoritarian dictatorship. And they then spent a couple of years stalking me and being my pet disfavourite troll. But I got to give them their due. They first informed me of the story of Jeffrey Epstein running a child prostitution blackmail ring to get the dirt on a whole bunch of up-and-comers and powerful people within the US and pretty much all the NATO governments. And I said, you know, that's got to be garbage. It's just like bullshit. Why would you say that to me? So when I saw a comment from the Phoenix, I actually answered it because I disparaged their information, suggesting that it was all just like the QAnon Pizzagate garbage. But no, if I had to hazard a guess, I'd suggest that Q was attempting to deflect attention from the Epstein business by floating the Pizzagate story. There just seem to be endless layers of distraction going on. Now see, if someone runs into him, parked in the middle of the road there, he did pull off to the left eventually. One of the things that's occurred in the furore over Epstein, a bit difficult to talk while I'm in the slot trying to look in my back mirror while managing the new and unaccustomed speed. In the furore over Epstein, a lot of information has been made public. A lot of it I'd vaguely sort of heard, never actually put it all together. But apparently back in the 1980s, Ghislaine Maxwell was introduced to young Mr. Epstein by her father Robert Maxwell, and Robert Maxwell was a bit of a strange sort of a bloke. He was a Jewish Hungarian who got into the communist partisans during World War II to fight against the Nazis. That worked pretty well perfectly. And after the war he tried to ingratiate himself with the British intelligence, the Russian intelligence. But they decided in about 1947 or 48 that he was actually loyal to Israel. And then he tried getting into the British intelligence, and they made the same decision that the Russian intelligence forces did. And then all of a sudden, it's alleged the money comes from Mossad, but he had 560 million British pounds or American dollars with which to buy himself a media empire centred on newspapers. And then he was able to put a pro-Israeli spin on anything that went through the papers. Eventually he was found to have misappropriated 560 million units of currency from his newspaper's employees' pension fund. And while he was considering all that, he was on his private yatchet, which is a smart ass's way of saying a yacht, and on his yatchet he was apparently drunk and piddling over the edge when he fell into the Atlantic and drowned. When they found his body, it was immediately flown to Israel, where the Prime Minister of Israel delivered the funeral elegy, and the upper chain of command of Mossad were in attendance. So that's more or less the evidence or indication that Robert Maxwell was a spy for Israel, living and working in Britain a long time. Now, whether he recruited his daughter into Mossad or whether he recruited Epstein into Mossad, or whether Epstein was sent to Robert Maxwell to be introduced to Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't know. But she got sent to jail for procuring minors to be introduced to Epstein, where he sexually assaulted them and then palmed them off onto his clientele, customers, blackmail victims, whatever. Newspapers in America have published photos of the inside of his house showing the cameras concealed at ceiling level pointing at the bed in his guest bedroom. And there's hundreds of now grown women who've complained that they were sexually assaulted by Ghislaine and Epstein, and that then they were trafficked to his clientele, his friends. Now, what would be the point of all that, one wonders? My personal speculation starts in about 1973 during what they called the Yom Kippur War, for which Israel was not particularly well prepared. My economics teacher was in Israel just before the Yom Kippur War. He'd been there for about 6 months. And the war broke out, and he was on a kibbutz with his wife. So they went through the Yom Kippur War, and he explained to our class how all the bomb shelters and bunkers were sort of full of garbage and rubbish and had to be cleaned out in a hell of a hurry, because after the Six-Day War in 1967, the Israelis thought nobody was going to ever harass them again. But after a couple of days, the Israelis did such a number on the Arabs that Chris Kopp, which was his name, he reckoned that the standing joke in Israel, or in his kibbutz anyway, was come to Israel and see the pyramids. So the Israelis were advancing on all fronts when all of a sudden OPEC told NATO that if you don't put a leash on that bunch of Israelites, we're going to cut off your oil. So the American president, the English Prime Minister and the French President all got on the hot phone to Israel, and Israel's tanks, which were advancing, stopped in their bloody tracks and backed out. And then OPEC cranked the price of crude oil, more or less doubled it. And my personal suspicion is that at about that point, Mossad started figuring out they needed to get some kind of a purchase or a hold onto the governments of all those countries. So that's when young Mr. Epstein in the 80s was selected after much careful thought as being a really good candidate to go out there and ingratiate himself with people who looked as if they were either in power or going to become in power at some later date. Give them a free holiday and get them pissed and get some footage of them having sex with someone who they weren't married to, and ideally someone that it was unlawful to have sex with. And then any time later on in life, they could be coerced into making decisions that would favour Israel. And when you think about the number of international legal transgressions the Israelis have gotten away with, up to and including building 200 nuclear warheads in contradistinction of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, but that doesn't really matter because they never signed that treaty. They occupied Gaza for 20 years, they've occupied Lebanon twice, they've bombed the shit out of other countries without any declarations of war. This is not at all the first time they've bombed Iran. They've got a bunch of dinosaurs who's
of the battery left and I'm cruising on 59 at the moment. So yeah, if that's what was going on, if Robert Maxwell groomed his daughter from Mossad and introduced her to Epstein and set him off as a self-contained dirt-digging unit, and they picked up Trump because he was just such a naturally lecherous scumbag sort of a son of a bitch who was in the habit of employing homeless, helpless, resourceless, clueless teenage runaways like Virginia Guthrie. And if Epstein hung around with Trump, then he could pick up an endless source of recruits to be fed through their basically child sex blackmail prostitution ring. That might perhaps explain why in his 10-15 year friendship with Epstein, Trump left such a memory in so many people's minds that it took 1,000 FBI agents something over a week to go through all the documents, 100,000 pages of documents. So they got 1,000 pages each or something, maybe it was 10,000 pages and they had 100 pages each, doing nothing but redacting Trumpy's name. I mean, it all sort of hangs together, and the fact that I've been talking about it for this long while not talking too much about federalising the Washington City Police, putting the National Guard into Washington, allegedly to crack down on violent crime, which is 30% lower now than it was 5 years ago when Trump was president last time. While the Texas government announces they're going to create 5 new Republican voting state seats, and they try to send the FBI after the Democrat senators from Texas who've run away into the state, so that the Republicans from Texas are incapable of getting a quorum, so they can't pass their legislation to create the new seats. Why are we not talking about that? Because we're already in town and we wasted all that time yapping about bloody Epstein. So it seems to be distractions within distractions within distractions, on a hell of a lot of it, believe it or not, apparently runs all the way back to Israel. And I would never have believed it, but you know, there you go, Phoenix. You get a shout out, you get an apology, you get an admission that I was wrong and you were right, and you get my personal estimation of what might be perhaps maybe going on. 72%. Isn't stage 3 regenerative braking lovely? Haven't touched the brake lever yet. We will have to here though. And this is a 40 zone, so I'm lawfully abiding by the speeding of the limit. I'm really only going to pull in here to check the speedo, or the odometer, and see what that actually involved. "15 kilometres, 19 minutes, 47 average, 67 max. So there you go, and now you know. and I wasn't frightened even once. I got out through all of those slot traps and double guardrails, and nobody had to wait behind me. And this is a 50 zone, but there's nobody behind me, so I can turn a little bit of that altitude into kinetic energy and rotate that into current coming down there. In a car you'd come along here at 50, but there's so many patched potholes that on this thing, especially with the cross brace on the rack for the pannier bags, 35 to 40 is as fast as you want to go over the bumps, unless you want to stand up in the foot pegs to avoid running the tyre into the rack. Bloody wrong turn there, eh? Too busy looking at the traffic. Shows you how often the Hermit comes to town and how regularly one does not visit fire control. Perfect conclusion to the video, actually. Didn't even bloody well know which gate to go in. Right, there we go. Much more grandiose style of an edifice. Look at that, we've even got an actual motorcycle parking spot. And if you don't go through this ritual, the lining of the gauntlet sticks to your fingers, and next time you go to put them on, it ain't going to work. Right, how's that? Helmet hair strikes again, but not for long. Bubbles on a lot of YouTube. Ciao.